Okay, so we're live streaming now. If when you guys get set up and you're ready, you're welcome to start whenever. So this is Bambi. They're working with clients that sell to Walmart and created a data processing engine to extract the data from Walmart in order to kind of inform the clients of trends and pricing and other things.
There we go. Ready? Yeah. Good morning. So we are Bambi. That stands for Bentonville Merchants Business Intelligence. I'm Aaron. This is Sean. This is John. So to start off telling our story today, our story all starts and ends with Walmart. As we know, Walmart's a huge retailer, and as such, they have all the power and the relationship with their suppliers. So if you're a small company and you want to sell your product at Walmart, you really have to play by Walmart's rules. And Walmart has a lot of strict guidelines that they make these companies follow, and then they'll penalize them financially if they don't follow those. So for a lot of these small companies that just have a couple products that they're trying to get into Walmart, this presents a bit of a challenge. And that's where the Bentonville Merchants come in. This is a company located in Arkansas where a bunch of former Walmart employees who've kind of been on both sides of this relationship between the suppliers and Walmart have gotten together, left Walmart, and formed their own company that they consult these small businesses and help them kind of navigate the ins and outs of being a Walmart supplier. And so our very own John Lynn here interned with Bentonville Merchants last summer, and that's kind of where this project was born. Is part of the product that Bentonville Merchants sells to these clients, these small businesses that are trying to get into Walmart, is the data that Walmart is tracking for them, right? Because if they don't hit certain guidelines, then Walmart's going to penalize them, so they need to know, are we hitting those guidelines or not? Now, as recently as this semester, John and another information system student here, Joe Isabel, decided to break off from Bentonville Merchants. They were kind of functioning, just the two of them, as the IT group in Bentonville Merchants. They found out that as the company was growing, they weren't necessarily getting compensated for the work that they were doing, and so they wanted to kind of come up with a new model. So they split off from the company and they started their own startup. They're calling Merchant Labs, and then they're going to what they've done is they've won a contract back with Bentonville Merchants. So now they are doing all the data processing for them, and Bentonville Merchants is paying them directly per client, which is a better, more sustainable model for these two. So this is kind of how the system looked initially before we started the project. Retail Link over there, that's Walmart's database and their web app. There was a C# program that kind of pulled the data out of Retail Link, stored it in Azure Cloud Services, and then basically pushed it through to Excel, and then the Bentonville Merchants got it from there. So that's kind of what it looked like. This system was working, but it had a lot of limitations to it, and that's where we came in as we decided, how can we improve this system, how can we make it better? We eventually decided just to start out from scratch. So what we're going to show next is some of the limitations of this system. The first at the top here, is probably the biggest one, was it relied on a manual report refresh. So in order for this to work, somebody had to get up at 5 a.m. every morning that the reports are going to be run and manually start hitting buttons in order to get these reports refreshed. And then they'd look through these reports, make sure that they looked right, and then send them all out by the time the business day started. So as you can imagine, there's not a lot of people that are very willing to do that on a daily basis. And so what ended up happening is they had to settle for, we'll just do this once a week. So every Monday morning, someone gets up and starts hitting all these buttons in the middle of the night in order to get the report into the right hands. So that was the first problem that we wanted to tackle. The second one over here is the data granularity. Due to the way that the database was designed and kind of the infrastructure of the system, it just couldn't handle all of the data that Walmart could give us. And so we ended up having to aggregate everything on a company level instead of at the store-wide level. So there's a couple specific measures that Walmart looks at for, like in-stock percentage, for example. And that needs to be 98% or more, but that 98% is really an aggregate of an average of all of the stores' in-stock percentages. So we could go to a company and say, hey, you're actually at 97%, you need to fix that. And then they'd say, okay, well, which warehouse do I need to send it to? Which stores are low? And we wouldn't be able to answer that question for them. They can't dig that next level deeper. And then lastly, scalability, adding new clients. the system was designed in such a way that it was really hard to add, when the Bentonville merchant signed another client, to add them in. It was like another week and a half's worth of work just to add this one more client. And then there was problems with the analysts wanting to look at data across clients. It didn't work very well for that use case either. So these are the 3 problems that we really wanted to tackle as we started to redesign the system and think about what we wanted to do. We said we want to make sure that, 1, nobody has to get up in the middle of the night. It's just going to do it by itself. And more than that, we want to make sure that happens every day instead of every week. Secondly, we have to make sure that the data is on the right grain. That when they come to this and say, hey, why is this number the way that it is, we can push them the next level deeper and say, here's why. You can look at the next level of data. And then lastly, we wanted it to scale and be able to work even if Bentonville Merchant signs 100 new clients.
So these factors all came into play when we were redesigning our system. Like Aaron was saying, we really wanted the data model to fit and be scalable to whatever number of clients. So for example, if we wanted to make a change to the US reporting, there's about 30 clients. So you go in to every Excel report and change 30 pivot tables. So it's not dynamic at all. So we did a lot of restructuring. We built a database diagram and everything to be able to store the data together so that we don't have a bunch of sharded data. Actually, that's what we did. We made a database for every client that we had and then sharded across them in order to aggregate them together, which is not an efficient way to do things. Also, you saw that we were able to pull data out of Retail Link, but we have a specific program to do it, and it's not wrapped in an API or anything, so we don't have dynamic queries. The first thing that we built was an API that wrapped around Walmart's Retail Link. We can just send it recipes for reports, and it'll bring us back data on the fly. We can change time periods. It's very dynamic. That's hosted in Azure. We also, to manage the workflows of ETL, decided to go with Apache Airflow. Originally, we were thinking about doing SSIS, but we found 3 advantages with Airflow, namely the ability to manage a schedule, which SSIS does. It also has task dependencies that you can change, so you can change the order of running requests to Retail Link, and you can do error handling right in Airflow. We'll show that a little bit later. And we host that all in a set of coordinated Docker containers. And then we have a data warehouse hosted in Amazon RDS. And we have a Node server running for the front-end app. We'll demo that a little bit later. Are there any questions so far about, I know this is a lot of components to the system.
I guess my question kind of goes back to probably your lessons learned, maybe, but it looks like you're covering a lot of different classes that you've probably had in the program. I see some infrastructure stuff there, obviously database, and I don't know if you've taken the advanced database. Are there other, some web dev classes and other things?
Yeah,
is that
we
accurate?
pulled everything. We pulled out all this stuff. So yeah, I can say that I've used tools from so many of the classes that, at least in this MISM year that I've taken, and from the junior core also, especially with the front end stuff.
So the first question that we got to when we started working on this is, how do we get data out of Walmart? Before we can do that, there's nothing we can do if we don't have that set up. And so here's just a little sequence diagram of kind of this dance that we do with Walmart in order to get data out. So all of these steps have to run correctly before we can get to this last one, which is Walmart sending us the report with the actual data that we need. And so as you can see here, there's 5 major steps where we send something out, they send something back. That could get looped because one of the steps is, hey, we say Walmart, hey, will you generate this report? It could take them anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, I think is the max that we've seen for them to generate those reports. And so we kind of have to wait and check and say, hey, are you done yet? So that's kind of where this loop is coming in the middle. So with all these requests going back and forth, we had to be really careful that everything's just going to work out in the right schedule, right? We can't have these lower steps kicking off before the Walmart's got back to us on the upper steps. And so this is kind of where Airflow comes in, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Is, we have these 5 steps per report. We have 6 reports per client. Right now there's about 30 clients. So it really adds up, and we're trying to do this every day. So that's kind of where the next question that we came into, and we'll talk more about airflow, is how can we get all these to run and the air handling to work correctly, and we know that like it's not going to get out of order.
So yeah, I have a question around that. So typically you think of synchronous REST APIs. Here it sounds like you get a request in, you must have to store state around the previous requests that were made, and then handle kind of where you're at in the process. What language were you writing this in?
So yeah, we had to do C#
Okay.
because the library was in Visual Basic.
Sure,
We had to
sure.
use.
Okay.
But what was cool is we figured out how to cache the connections to Retail Link, which makes it a lot faster the second time you make a request, and it makes it so we're not making 100 connections to Retail Link, which would get suspicious.
Yeah.
So we plug in once and then cache that. And then
Yeah. And so it's not the creation of the connection necessarily, or is there some negotiation that, where does that cost come from?
So there's a handler in the C# REST API that checks if there's already a connection that it's stored in its cache, and then it'll call on that, which makes it really
I guess where I'm going is typically when the cost of connections to the database are super expensive, but it's in the creation and the consumption of resources for that connection, your local resources. Here where it's out there, I assume it's a little bit different of a challenge than that typical one where you have lots of connections kind of spinning up and stuff. Is there how long does a typical connection take to make to Walmart's API?
The first time, if it doesn't have
the first
a connection,
time.
it can take like 10 to 15 seconds.
Wow.
I think.
Okay. Cool.
So.
And is it always successful in getting the reports it wants, or is there times when Walmart doesn't have?
Yeah, so Airflow handles those exceptions. We're building all the logic into Apache Airflow.
Airflow is like the big meat of the app.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time on this Airflow actually because it's a new technology. It was open sourced by Airbnb not too long ago, but it's standard pretty much for new data engineering companies. And there's various components you can see. You have to have a metadatabase for Airflow to run on. You can kind of see examples of the web interface going through the GIF right here. But there's also a web server, and there's a scheduler and a job queue on Redis, and then you have celery workers running. So all of these, when you run this on Docker, are separate containers, and you need to coordinate them. And so I learned a lot about writing Docker files, and we learned a lot about making the configurations work together.
Just a quick question: is it you had to coordinate through like shared volumes between the containers, but you're not using like Kubernetes to spin up a whole bunch to handle the load, right? This is more lots of independent processing that you have to get to coordinate.
Docker Compose coordinating between them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So this is an example of our first DAG that we wrote, a directed acyclic graph, which is a sequence of tasks that are run. So you can see this is a vendor, and I've only programmed through. We have 6 tables in the database, but these are just 3 of the reports that need to run. So we have the warehouse report, the store report, and the item report. And Airflow, a celery worker is going to shoot off a request to Walmart, and then it's going to, after it's shot off, it's going to check every 10 minutes for it to finish. And then once it's finished, it has the done status. It's going to extract that query from Walmart, and then we have it waiting till all 3 are done so we can do a transform on the data before we load it into the RDS. And then all the tasks finish together. So
I was thinking that your kind of checking and the status updates were handled by your REST API based on a call, and it would hand something back. It sounds like that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that are there webhooks back to Airflow to update status, or do you just have a separate API call to say, hey, check the status of that, check the status of that?
It's a different action on the so all of the different actions, requesting, extracting, checking, are all different actions in the API.
And do you kind of uniquely identify your transaction for a specific report up front when you say, hey, I want to get this report, you pass it an ID, and then you just call these other methods with that ID?
It has a job ID,
Okay,
which
got
is
it.
produced right here,
Yep.
which we store and use it to make the other requests.
Okay, great, thanks. Nice.
It'd be a lot easier if we could just make a request and pull the data. But
I mean, you could dump the logic behind and then just have these periodic calls to that same REST API, and it's handling all this logic on the back, but I like this way a lot better.
So this is an example. What's cool, advantage of Airflow is you can go back and, I'm not showing the boxes here, but you can, this is an instance of a task. You can click on it and you can look into what happened. You can look into the code that ran. You can rerun it. You can clear the status of it. So over time, and you can backfill your tasks too. You can say run back 2 years ago, which will be really useful for us when we set up a new client to retrieve the historical data. So really useful on the interface. You can store environment variables. Go ahead to the next slide. That's good. You can store connection information in Airflow so that you don't have to put that into your DAGs. It just knows get this environment variable. So that's pretty nice. Any questions about Airflow? We didn't want to go too far into it, but
yeah, there's a lot to uncover there. So we're going to show a quick demo of the web interface that we built for this.
yeah.
And speaking of utilizing different classes, we designed the UI in this in Bonnie Anderson's class, the UX design class, and so we pulled a lot of resources from all of our learning in, like John said, the junior core. And so here you can see the client on the side, and then here's where you get the report. And if we click item information, it'll sit and it'll download the report in Excel. The analysts are still using Excel, and that's their preferred format to look at the information. At the beginning of the project, we had big ideas and big plans for building some visualizations and dashboards, which are still in the works for the company, but the scope of the project, especially with the error handling and airflow and figuring out those problems, limited us to this. But this is definitely the deliverable that we wanted to get done in the time frame of this project, was making sure that we could get the backend processing done and be able to download the Excel file. And the first time this runs, I think it took us 30 seconds to a minute.
So describe to us what's going on here. This is making the initial request for one of those reports and hitting Airflow, or do you have this report cached somewhere?
Yeah, so we run
Okay.
the Airflow every morning.
I got
so
it,
This
got
is
it.
just this morning's.
Yeah,
data.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
could run this at 9 a.m. You could run it at 12, and you get the same result.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
time
yeah.
is not gonna
So
get
so
this
what
in a minute.
what's taking the time here then?
It's kind of slow right now. We're still working on, the reports are going to be cached on the node server, so
Mhm.
after the first request, it will be, and it honestly hasn't taken this long before.
Yeah, it's the first time this happened.
Understood.
Maybe try it one more time. But yeah, one of the goals, basically on retail link, you have to wait several minutes to get your data.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah,
should be
here you have it cached and grab it
instantaneous,
quickly.
Yeah. But
And so is this action going to your database and formulating the reports, or just serving up a file that you've already created?
yeah, so it's going to the database where we have the data warehouse table where it's already aggregated, and then it's just pulling straight. So to make it fast, just a simple query.
Yeah.
Select this vendor from this table.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So it's just pulling in a table and then you're gonna do the front end.
Mm-hmm. So we can do some with a certain library. We can do some formatting for the Excel before they get it, so it looks kind of like a table. But
What library are you using?
oh,
No worries.
Yeah, because right now it's just a simple table with like all the information in it without the formatting. Some of the lessons
Now, how
learned.
many rows are these tables? What size are we talking about?
Yeah, some of the clients have up to 300 items.
So not too
columns.
bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if they're getting at the store level, then it could go up to like 100,000 rows in Excel. So, because there's 3,000 stores times however many items they have. So.
Which is why some reporting on some common statistics would be very efficient. Some of the main lessons learned as we were talking about this project is the configuration. We pulled a lot of our knowledge from what we've learned in the program, but there's still a lot of learning that we had to go through. And that ties into like project management and planning out the project. I guess our eyes were bigger than our stomach in a lot of ways, and we didn't account for maybe our own onboarding experiences. Even when you're hired on at a company, there's a time frame of onboarding that you get familiar with the tools and the languages and things like that that you'll be using in day-to-day work before you can get up and running. So for example, like John said, Docker took us a while. We learned a little bit about Docker in the infrastructure class, but not quite to the extent that we were utilizing it. Another thing is the flexibility of being able to change on the fly. At the beginning of the semester, we planned on using Microsoft SSIS and using that for scheduling, and then we found out about Airflow after asking some of the other IS students about any ideas they had about scheduling. And someone said they used Airflow at work, and we looked into it and it seemed to work perfectly for our project. So being able to be flexible. I like to think of it as we built this box at the beginning of the semester and last semester of our expectations, but we were willing to look outside the box and be flexible to incorporate new and emerging technologies and tools. And in hindsight, there's another tool that we found called Astronomer that helps build your DAGs in Airflow for you and host them for you. So it's a lot of the work we did, and they built a business around doing that for clients, which would be a very effective tool if you didn't want to put in the time building your own DAGs.
It was just such a specific thing that we needed. We didn't think that somebody provided that, but
yeah. Especially with such a new tool, but it makes sense that a business would crop up around something like that. I also like to think one of the lessons learned is the greater perspective we have about like a software development lifecycle. Through most of our courses, we've learned aspects of them, and we focus on one part in that class, but doing this makes you see all of the aspects, like we wear all the hats, so it gives us a greater perspective going into the workforce, being able to see your role in the greater picture. Because a lot of times we go and work at a company that's large and established, and you work on one little part of that company, but this way we saw how a project manager works, how a manager works, how the executive team would work doing the business deals, how the development team would work, and how they should all work together, since we were playing all the roles together.
And just to wrap up, when we started this project, we all kind of had big eyes, and we thought, oh, we can do some cool stuff in Power BI, we can do some data mining for these companies, and what we ended up learning is, unless you have the right data in the right format, you can't start with any of that stuff. And so that's essentially what we did for this project, built the data engine so that now the data is in the right format and is usable and accessible. For Merchant Labs in the future, these are some of their plans. The most exciting one, I think, is this first bullet point is just this week, they've entered into negotiations with their first client outside of Bentonville Merchants. So this client came to Bentonville Merchants and said, hey, we're looking to sell in Walmart. We've heard that you do data. We don't really care about your other services, but we want the data that you provide. And Bentonville Merchants said, oh, we don't actually do that. Merchant Labs does that. And so they're now in negotiations to get their first contract, and that would be at store level data granularity, which is not something that was available before this project. So we're pretty excited about that. And then in the short term, the other things is just redesign the reports, hopefully make some new visualizations, and then hopefully do some data mining. There's a lot of different numbers to sift through if you're the analyst before you can find the one opportunity for improvement. We're hoping, Merchant Labs is hoping in the future to maybe come up with some statistical models to help with that process. And then the last part is that this is just kind of the first step for Merchant Labs. We're doing this for Walmart right now, but with the infrastructure that we've built in place, they're hoping to duplicate this and eventually get into Target and Amazon as well. So we really liked working with this project, and we felt like we've learned a lot from it. And that's all we have. Thank you.
who are the principals of Merchant Labs? It's these guys here. It's not like some other company that you're working with. You guys started Merchant Labs.
Yeah, February we started.
So you did an internship back there and either made connections or worked for Bentonville Merchants or something, and then kind of spun from there, right?
Exactly, yep. So going forward, we kind of have plans to, because we have the old system, we're going to release different part, like get this part working so that we can get clients at least on getting some reports from the new system and incrementally release it to the full vision of it. And actually, I have a presentation in Doug's class, a couple hours we're able to predict in stock with this tool that I built there, and then in Dr. Key's class, we're able to do a market basket type analysis, so I'm hoping to integrate those into the system also.
So do you do this full-time then when you graduate?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's the plan.
And do you move to Bentonville then?
Yeah,
Cool.
in next January.
It's a great little town. Awesome. All right. Any questions?
Well, just one comment.
Yes.
And you alluded to it earlier, but in terms of covering the waterfront of what we've taught in the core, I haven't seen a project that comes close.
I agree with that.
This is really kind of amazing in terms of integration and saying, you taught us a whole bunch of stuff here, and we used it all. That makes us feel pretty good.
Look at the value. All right, any other questions? All right, thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay, I think next we have Board Game Pal. Yes. Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Are we good to go?
Yeah, good to go.
All right. Well, in case you don't know, I'm Steven. This is Braden. Our project is Board Game Pal. We're going to go over this is our overview of what we're going to be talking about. So we'll discuss the problem, the solution, kind of our technology, how we went about building it. We'll have a demo, lessons learned, future plans. So the problem that we were trying to solve is based around mine and Braden's desire to play games, board games, card games, whatever the game is. Each game that we play, we realize there's something missing. There's something that could be better if we had an app to use alongside of our gameplay. Specifically, some of our favorite games, Pinochle, Sushi Go, and Legendary, they all had very specific pain points that we wanted to solve. And so the idea was to build 3 apps for these 3 games to solve the specific problems. Perhaps you can all relate to Pinocle's problem. I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but say you're at a family gathering, you get down, you sit together with everybody, you start dealing out cards to play your favorite game, and you realize halfway through you're playing that you don't have a way to keep score. And so you're like, oh, we need a paper and pen. And everyone starts looking around to try to find something that resembles a piece of paper and a pen. And usually somebody pulls a receipt out of their bag, and you can find a crayon somewhere. And in the end, your scoring is, a bunch of scribbles on a tiny piece of paper, and you're not really sure if the math was even done correctly and who's actually winning the game. So with the Pinochle app, the idea was to solve the scoring woes that presents. With Sushi Go, it's very similar. Sushi Go is a game that has a lot of different scoring mechanisms, and it's hard to keep track of what cards do what and how the scoring should proceed. And then Legendary is a game where there are lots and lots and lots of cards and scenarios and ways that you can play, and as a result, the setup for Legendary can take a while, the cleanup of Legendary can take a while, and then you have to decide which scenario to play. And so the idea for that was an app to basically provide the setup in a digitized form, random scenario that will allow you to play right away. And then with any game that you play, board game or card game, there's not really a good way to like analyze your gameplay. For example, if you are playing Legendary and you keep losing, you want to know why you keep losing, and we wanted to provide a way for you to kind of analyze patterns in your gameplay and be able to improve. So the solution, like I said, is Board Game Pal. Wanted to build a specific app for each of these games. So the names of the apps would be Pinochle Pal, Sushi Go Pal, Legendary Pal, and so on with all the games that we decide to build in the future, or apps for the games that we decide to build. And they're designed specifically to solve the pain point for that app. There were a lot of suggestions, and there are actually a couple solutions that are like try to one size fit all, like build an app that will solve your problems for a lot of games. But being gamers, we don't like those apps because they don't serve the need of the game. So the idea was to build 4 apps, or 3 apps, excuse me. So in the end, we only have 1 app that is available. However, if you go to Google Play Store, you can download it. It's Pinochle Pal, and it is ready for use, and that's what we'll be using in our demo. The other 2 apps, the Sushi Go Pal and Legendary Pal, we got through our lo-fi designs, we did a bunch of user testing, and and Braden will go into this, since we use React Native in our tech stack, we have a lot of the components that we'll need to build those apps ready for when we actually do that. So.
Yeah, we had to scale down a little bit because we originally had another team member, my brother, that was going to help us out, and he wasn't able to make it. And then we realized even after that we probably bit off more than we could chew, and so we scaled it back quite a bit. And we also wanted to have 1 really good app rather than 3 really crappy apps that wouldn't actually do anybody any good. So we decided just to focus more on getting a lot of good things into 1 app instead of three not as good ones. Okay, so this is our tech stack. We decided to use React Native for a couple reasons. We wanted to make it so that it was cross-platform. That was a big thing for us, especially since we didn't have any like really low-level things that we really needed to do with the app. And this made it really easy to publish in both iOS and Android. We decided to go with React Native specifically because I already knew React Native, and that was a big bonus for us. We also used Redux, a couple of projects like React Native Elements, and then this is Expo, which helps with our a lot of our publishing and stuff like that. So let's talk about our process, just kind of what we did. We did a lot of research, and then after we would research stuff, we would design something. We would then user test, and then we would find all the random stuff that went wrong. We would then repeat this, we'd research some more, design some more, test some more, and just iterate over and over. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that iteration process and show you a little bit, like screen by screen, what the changes occurred with it. So, and talk about our research as well. So some things that we had to do. First of all, Steve had never even done anything in React before, so we had to do a lot of research on how to even properly code in React. This was an interesting one for me that I never really had to look up a ton, but iOS versus Android. There's a lot of differences between the 2 platforms. Just one example is that the tabs typically on an Android phone they'll be at the top of your screen, and they'll have like words on it and a little slider thing that goes back and forth depending on which tab you're on.
Whereas on iOS, you'll typically have the tabs at the bottom of the screen, and they'll have icons on it. So we had to account for both of those to work appropriately, so it seemed like a pretty native app on both sides. They have the little slight differences between the two. The other one is we are using ads in our app, and so we had to learn how to appropriately use them so they aren't disrupting game flow and they're not being misclicked and they're not having other issues like that. So we'll show you a little bit later in our demo kind of how we thought that through. One thing I didn't know, you have to have icons of certain sizes, and you have to have, there's like a lot of red tape that you have to get through in order to actually put it into the Play Store. I think the last 2 weeks has been me like banging my head against the wall trying to figure out which like little tiny detail I missed this time, like, oh, I didn't put version code 2 instead of version code 1, or whatever thing I have to do in order to make it get into the Play Store appropriately. We did some research into competitors in the same space. This brought a little bit into why we went into Pinochle Pal. Some of that was that we already had a lot of the designs finished for Pinochle Pal, and we were the first, we were kind of the furthest along in that. But additionally, there's not actually like any good app in this space for specifically for Pinochle. There's a couple of ones that really have a horrendous UI, and they get like 3 stars I think in the Play Store right now. So we figured there was a lot of space open for us there, as well as the other 2 apps that we decided to go with, because there's a plethora of games, and the board game hobby market is growing like crazy right now, and there's tons of new games coming out all the time. So did a little bit on user testing, best practices, and I kind of talked about the policies for the App Store. So let's go over our iterations, just screen by screen. This is the very first mock-up that we use for our testing for the home screen. And as you look, this is one of the few screens that stayed almost the same, which was kind of nice. The big difference is this button change. This was mostly, and I think Steve will talk about this a little bit later, but Steve probably spent hours trying to figure out how to make this switch work across both platforms. And in the end, we're like, well, let's just use a button group, and it worked just as well. And it didn't have any user test problems with it later either. So this screen stayed pretty much the same, which was nice, but that was not like a lot of our other screens that we had to go through. So this one is the team screen. So Pinochle, you're split up into 2 teams, typically of 2 or 3 players, depending on the number of players you have. And so I stole this design from a different app that I liked, where the user would flip their phone sideways, and they would click and drag things over to the different spots. Turns out they didn't realize that they needed to click and drag, and they also didn't like turning their phone sideways, because everything else in the app is straight up and down, and they didn't like turning it. So, and this was really busy, and there was not a lot of stuff that really works for it. So instead, used a similar design, but put up here, added like little drag here signs, and then people kind of understood what they needed to do to put people on different teams. Turns out that dragging here into little spots is really difficult to do and not worth probably the amount of like extra effort. I'm pretty sure we could have spent half of our project trying just to make that one thing work. So instead, we ended up with just making buttons that you can click, and then it'll pull up a little pop-up, and you can type in someone's name. So this is how it ended up with the Android and the iOS versions. A little bit of differences between the 2, but they're pretty similar. We also took, this is the most complex part of this, the app was this screen, which is actually scoring. So a lot of the users that will be using our app are not super tech savvy. A lot of grandmas and grandpas who haven't really done a lot of tech things, and maybe are just getting phones and whatnot. And so we wanted to make this a very simple, easy process, which is why we did a lot of user testing to make sure that it was pretty simple and easy and straightforward. So we took, this is our first one, and nobody knew what to do with the screen. They just like kept pushing things, and like I don't know where I'm at, because there was a lot of like data all at once. So we split this thing up into 2 different screens to match the phases of the game. So there's a bidding phase, and instead of just having like a score that you could put up here on the side, we had one screen that would ask them the question, kind of walk them through how to use this. So who took this bid, and you click on Bob, because Bob took the bid, and then how much was the bid, and you click there. You go to the next step, and then you can input your melts and tricks. This was here, go back real quick. After a few more iterations, we found that this bid thing right here was confusing, because everybody was supposed to be on, like Team 1 and Team 2 were always on one side or the other, and so people kept flipping back a screen to see which team they were on when they saw this person, because if Fred was on Team 2, they didn't know, or if Bob was on Team 2, they didn't know, because it was always on the same side. So our final iteration, we made it so that it switched sides based off of that, and that seemed to fix kind of issues that they had with not remembering where people were. And it cleared up a lot of things. And if you look, this is kind of the same. You have the tabs up here for scores and rounds, and scores and rounds down here for the iOS version. So reasons why we user test. A lot of our, and we would have never found this out if we hadn't user test, but a lot of our a lot of our users of our app have they increase the font size on their phones, and it just turns out that that really makes your buttons look really dumb, and it makes so your titles wrap around. So if we had a user test, we wouldn't have found that out, but we were able to fix that because we had our actual users using our stuff and fixing things. But that was kind of a fun one to come up. We like pulled up the app and it was all screwed up. I'm like, I don't know what happened, and it took us a while to figure out. It was the usability, accessibility settings. So.
Did you end up just making the buttons bigger or decreasing the font?
No. So what we did is that we, specifically for the titles that were already large enough and for the buttons that had really large text, we just ignored the accessibility increase, and so it made it so that the regular font that was small increased, and that fit just fine, but the buttons stayed the same, so we didn't have to like adjust a lot. Because it was going to be really hard to like, especially for like iPad size and stuff, to make the buttons like scale correctly and stuff, and so this worked out a little nicer and a little cleaner. Okay, so we're going to get into our demo. I have to pull up a little thing here. I think this might play an ad real quick. But we thought it would be good to go through the way that the app works with the game specifically. So we're going to kind of just mock out a small game so you guys can see where it kind of fits in, especially for those of you who don't really know Pinochle very well, which I'm assuming most of you don't. But so I'm just going to kind of show right here some of the stuff while Steve works through.
Was that an ad?
Yeah.
That was an ad.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not actually sure why it showed up.
That's
so
not their
the ad
ad,
was
though.
actually on Visor, not on
yeah.
our app.
Okay.
The ad will show up in just a minute. I'll show
Yeah,
you.
you'll see the ad.
We actually found out one of the practices you're not supposed to do is play an ad as soon as the app opens
Yeah.
up.
That's right.
Because it gets really mad.
It's really annoying.
Yeah. And people misclick it all the time, which is not what we want. So
this is the landing page. When you first open the app, this is what you'll see. You'll only see the new game button, but since we're using the local phone storage to like save data, since Braden's already played with the app, he's got some game previously in the system that we can continue. So you can choose between 4 and 6. It's hard to tell, but there actually is a different color on that 6 button there. We're going to play a 4-player game, so then you would just go to New Game, and we showed you this in the slides, but you can remove players from the team, you can add a player, so let's say, since Braden's dad isn't here, we'll add me to the game, and there, I'm on his mom's team, team 1, and then we'll hit play. And so at this point in the game, Braden's divvying out the cards, the players are looking at their hands, so there's not really any interaction that is needed, so the users of this app aren't going to be mad about this ad popping up. It's not going to interrupt their gameplay at all. So, and if you want, you can download the app, go click on the ad, because that's how we get money. So,
How many downloads so far?
it actually hasn't updated yet because we released it
older
last
version.
night, and it doesn't update quickly enough. I think it took several hours for it to actually publish into the Play Store. But I know for sure at least 2 because my parents downloaded it.
Hey, perfect. That's the best start.
So in Pinochle, after you've all looked at your hands, the play then goes for a bidding round. So everyone goes around the table, and the highest bidder takes the bid. So we'll say Braden took the bid, and his bid got up to 300 points. At that point, you can hit next, and it takes you to this screen. This is kind of where all of the magic of the app happens, all of the special scoring. So at this point in the gameplay, all the players show the cards in their hand that build them points. And in the end, you just tally up the total points for each team, and go ahead and tell us the numbers, Brady.
Yeah, we got 230 for Team 1 and 100 for Team 2.
Awesome. So then once everyone's meld score is in there, then begins the trick round where everyone begins discarding cards, and it's kind of played by parts to get certain points. In the end, there's only a certain amount of trick points available, and so the total trick points will be split between the two teams, however that happens. And so we'll say that Team 1 scored only 20 tricks, and which would mean that Team 2 got the remaining 230. So that's automatically calculated as...
Can you correct it by clicking on it again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's automatically calculated. At this point, if we were to...
Just go change it to like 30 or something.
Not sure.
Oh, did you change it? Oh, you did. Yeah. Okay.
So that score changes, and then we can hit score, and the team's scores calculate at the top. So as we're playing rounds, let's say we mess up. We're like, ah, crap, Mom didn't actually win the bid. It was actually Steve that won the bid. So you can click on the name, and it will take you back to this screen, and
nice.
you can select who actually took the bid. At any point, even here, you can change how much the bid was, so you could change that. And then let's say we hit score accidentally, and we're upset that that wasn't actually what happened. We can go to the rounds tab up at the top, and we can go to this last round, edit it, and and we can delete it, and we can retry that.
So are you swiping? I can't tell which button you're pressing on to go back.
So on
or
Android,
just,
you
yeah,
could
just a little
swipe-
back.
You could swipe this way on Android
I
to
see.
go across, but you can also click the tabs to do it.
Yeah.
And then on iOS, they actually, it's weird, they don't like the swipe as much on iOS supposedly, and so that's disabled for iOS, but you just click on the tabs for iOS.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been clicking on stuff, but yeah, you can't swipe.
Yeah, it's funny because he's primarily our iOS, because he has an iOS device, I have an Android device, and so when he uses my phone, he still clicks the
Tapping,
tabs, and
yeah.
I still swipe trying
Nice.
on his phone, and
Nice.
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So.
So on this rounds screen, there's a finish game button. So when you click that, the game will end, and it will tell you who won. There's also a settings screen that you can tell the game when to end. So right now the default is set to end on a 4-player game at 1,500 points. So once one team reaches that, the game will end, and it will say who won. And I'll just go and show you what that looks like right now. So I clicked continue game on that screen to bring me to this screen, and I hit finish game. Tells you who won, what the rounds were like in the total game, and if you hit finish, a new ad pops up so that you can watch it and click on it and make money for us. And then you're ready to play a new game. If you hit new game, everyone's already in the same teams, and that can be changed as you go. So is that good?
Yeah. Any other questions on that before we close the demo up?
Is there like a rules screen or like...
There's not. So we assume that most people who are downloading an app for Pinochle already know how to play. We considered maybe putting in the rules, but there's like, this is a very old game. There's like 7 gajillion different types of rules for it, and so it's actually like, yeah, I feel like it almost would be detrimental to the app at this point. But the thing that is nice about that though is with the settings screen, because of the way this works, like some people actually, instead of doing 150, they only go to 15. They count everything as 1 point instead of 10 points, for example. That's like a pretty common other way to play it outside my family. And so like this allows you to go and change how much the total is that you can put in there, so that people can customize it to what they want. So, any other questions on that?
So moving in to our lessons learned, this is just some of them. I think we've learned a lot in doing this project. Our number one thing was development takes time. We initially planned for 3 apps, and probably given another month, I feel like we could have the other 2 a lot farther along, because most of the components are already built and they're ready to be used in other apps. But it takes time, and we just weren't anticipating how long our initial app would take us.
Yeah, especially with all the testing.
Yeah, all the research we had to do as well. In an agile environment, meeting frequently is a must. Braden and I needed to meet every week. If we didn't meet every week, we got lost. We didn't know what was done. It was hard to plan for our next sprint when our sprint meeting came around, because we just hadn't had the communication that we needed. When we did meet every week, we were able to get everything done, and it was great. The third thing, there's always a solution, even if it's not what you initially had envisioned. So for example, that switch on the home screen, I spent so long trying to make a beautiful switch that would work on iOS and Android, and after hours of trying, Braden's like, let's just do a button group, and it worked, and it doesn't take away any functionality or like beautiful design of the app. And then our fourth lesson learned is that user tests are really important, especially with mobile apps, because our phones are all different. We've got Android and iOS, we've got iPads and iPhones, we've got old people and young people who use their font size differently, and so our app is where it is right now because of many rounds of user testing.
So yeah, future plans. We have everything ready to, well, almost everything ready to do an iOS deployment. At least all the code base there. So that should be coming out soon. Hoping maybe for the end of the semester, depending on how long it takes for me to get into the iStore and get approved and all that. So
It'll take forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Okay.
And then it won't work. They'll
Good
say
to know.
reject.
Yeah, so we also have plans for making Sushi Go Pal and Legendary Pal. A lot of the the mock-ups have been finished with that, and a little bit of the user testing, and then a lot of the general components have been finished for that. Not some of the specific ones, but a lot of the general stuff has been. We also still want to introduce stat tracking, so just like a screen that kind of tracks every player and how they're doing, and maybe one player is taking really high bids all the time, so you don't want to be on their team because they'll screw over your team. So stuff like that. And we'd like to add a few other small UI changes. That'd be nice, just like a theme color picker, so you can, instead of just having the blue and orange kind of theme that we had there, you can change that up and kind of choose whatever theme you'd like. And then putting little avatars on those player components, so you can have a little picture of the person you're playing with, stuff like that. So these are just a few of the future plans. We intend on kind of keeping this going afterwards. I think our Google AdMob thing this last month said we earned 29 cents. So,
Hey, that's awesome.
That's
a lot of games played.
it's a lot of testing, is what it is. So, but yeah, so that was kind of cool to see. Yeah, I just looked. They just updated it last night.
Nice.
So, but yeah, that's kind of it for us. Do you guys have any questions?
Well, let's congratulate you first. Looks really good. I have a few. So you're using Google AdMob, and is that a cross-platform?
Yep.
Okay, and so the libraries will be seamless for your iOS deployment.
Yeah.
Tell me about your local storage. What are you using kind of for that, and
Yeah,
how persistent is it versus
So,
is it just in memory or?
It's hard to get rid of, but if you uninstall the app, I did find this out. If you uninstall the app, it does delete everything that you had on there. But we're just using the local storage. We're not actually storing anything for us. That's maybe something we'll do in the future. But we don't store any of the data like on a server somewhere. It's all local storage.
Yeah.
React Native has a couple of really nice built-in libraries to persist the data, and it works pretty seamlessly across both devices.
Which libraries are you using for that? Or just built in?
It's built into React Native. So it uses the
Okay.
SQLite like in Android.
Yeah,
And it uses
yeah.
What is the one in iOS? The default one in iOS. It uses that as well.
Okay.
But yeah, we use that. It works pretty seamlessly across that. We don't have to worry about it.
Okay, cool. Tell me about this Expo library that you mentioned helps with publishing. I haven't heard that one before.
So React Native usually does. So there's two ways to start a React Native app. You can do like the regular React Native way and build Android, build iOS stuff. You can also use Create React Native App, which is a new function. Expo is the one who created that method. And you can if you want, you can unplug from Expo and then continue building if you need like some specific platforms and specific things that Expo doesn't offer. But otherwise, you can keep it on Expo. They have a whole system where you can scan a QR code and you can display your app from the QR code, and it doesn't build it down to the base code for it. It just does basically a web app type of view thing that it puts into it. But you can also publish for user testing online. So we have a couple QR codes that are up online that a few of our testers use, that they will just scan the new QR code whenever we have a quick update that we want to have them just kind of cycle through and test. So that's really nice. And then Expo also, as long as you do everything in Expo, you can just compile it down to the APK that you need for the Play Store and everything. So
cool.
It's a pretty nice feature. There's a few things that it can't do, but it's gotten to the point where it's been developed across pretty well that it works really nicely at this point. It even has like AdMob integration and stuff like that you put in just directly from Expo. So
cool.
Excuse me, I've got class, so.
No worries.
Tell me on kind of your revenue model here. What is how many users do you need to get to, earn $100 a month or something like that?
We currently have a click-through rate of, we're earning about 4 cents per 1,000 views. So if there's I don't know, I haven't done the calculations yet on it, but if there's 2 views per game of Pinochle played per app that's being run, I mean, we're looking at quite a few downloads, thousands of downloads to make it really worthwhile. But, it's a start.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I think having a couple more apps out there will help with that and increase that revenue as well. But that's also a lot more hours to put in. So
I really like what you did with your editing of the scores. I think that's probably the biggest pain point I've seen is with some of these apps is you enter scores and like, whoops, that's incorrect. So
yeah.
Congrats on kind of thinking that component through. What other questions are there? Any? Okay, gentlemen, thanks. See. Up next, we have Buster and Johnny.
What's up?
You guys are here. Sweet. You have a couple minutes to kind of get set up. So, is your project still called Tri-Seas?
No.
Or Tri-Change?
We're calling it Pocket Therapy right now.
Oh. The executive summary that you sent in had the old name on it. So,
Oh, it did?
Yeah, I changed it to Tri-Change. So, in the annals of MISM Capstone history, you'll be known as Tri-Change, but colloquially we'll call you Pocket Therapist.
Yeah.
I still think Tri-Change is a better name, but it didn't fit anymore.
Yeah, we really like Tri-Change, but not relevant.
Change the tense.
Where'd it go?
I just video.
Yeah, it's right. It's a little small.
Good enough.
Keep me posted. Hey, enjoy class, everyone, when you leave. Right now.
Boom, out of here.
I'll stay. Oh, okay. Hopefully, we'll be entertaining enough, right?
You will be fantastically entertained.
I know, me too. Professor, who wakes up before 8? Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Except when you have a presentation to do.
Yeah, I know when you're actually making your presentation or trying to. Oh, man, it's so sensitive.
Bump it. Oh.
Hands off,
Over
man.
there.
All right, looks like we're 9:30, so gentlemen, you can have the floor and.
Yeah, welcome our viewers.
Yes.
Everyone tuning in, thanks for being here. All right.
Yeah, just watch.
Thanks.
Hopefully the numbers don't decrease now. Hopefully we'll drive up traffic.
All right, so we are Pocket Therapy, and we are helping bridge the gap from session to session.
Yeah.
I'm Johnny, you know Buster.
Yeah, and our viewers.
Cool. So first we'll kind of go over the problem that we were trying to tackle and assist with. So you can see this is a graph of mental health. It's a serious issue, and you'll notice this says any mental illness among U.S. adults. And then in just a second we'll see a graph for more serious mental illnesses. So this is anyone that has, it could be emotional, mental, behavioral issues. And you can see it's about 18%, which is almost 1 in 5. So that's pretty interesting. Almost 1 in 5 Americans have some form of a mental illness.
And that's assuming men actually report it.
Seriously.
Yeah, this is only reported, right?
Yeah, seriously. And right along with that, and this is what's interesting too, is that I feel like a lot of times people will think that people with mental issues, it's kind of chronic, and so if they've never had it, they never get it. But this number, I mean, the people involved in these numbers could change even on a yearly basis, right? I mean, different factors of stress or stress or any kind of pressure can, cause you to have some sort of mental issue for a while. And then some people do have a little more chronically. So that's interesting, right? So about 1 in 5. And then, so you can see this is a serious mental illness. It's more like 4%. But this describes a mental illness that stops you from functioning, right? So let's say that you have a serious form of depression. You wake up in the mornings and you don't want to go to work. You skip your work, your job, whatever commitments you have. Or it could be, in the form of an eating disorder for some people. They skip events with family or friends because they don't want to be near the food, whether they're eating too much, too little, whatever it is. So that describes a serious mental illness. You can see that affects 4%, and then certain groups higher than others. So it's interesting. So this is a big problem, and so that kind of sets the basis for what we wanted to do to try and help out. Plus, we'll do more of that.
Yeah, and I guess as a personal side note, being connected with it. So my mom's a therapist, and that's kind of where have a lot of exposure to this, and seeing people who have really struggled, and personally trying out therapy and all these different things, and trying to approach it in a way, because we spend a lot of time and money in doing something cool, fun. Everyone wants to be the next Uber, like ride sharing service or whatever it might be, but we really neglect the key parts that make our society function as an individual and their mental health. And so some of the problems, though, that have been encountered in mental health is that there isn't really a great way to measure client progress. Think of it, as we go to the gym, we are able to watch us get our gains and our swolls, and feel good about ourselves, and okay, I'll keep going back to my personal trainer, right? We go to a therapist, what do we see? Nothing, right? We might feel good for that session, we might shed a tear or two, feel a little relief, but after that we kind of die down. And with how insurances work, there's another problem, is that there's big gaps between when they can meet sometimes. So maybe insurance won't cover it, or maybe it will, but only cover once a month, once every bi-weekly, whatever it might be. So there's these gaps where they're having only one nice little moment and then a whole lot of emptiness. And so we realize that's kind of hard, and clients become frustrated with that and not being able to see it. And so they're not motivated to go back. They're like, oh, we're done. So there's a really high turnover rate amongst therapists, and they're spending a lot of more money and time in trying to figure out how to get new clients rather than focusing on the clients themselves at times. And so, and I guess on here, the last little point is that therapists, they just lack the information. They don't know, there's no records that go with them. Our medical records, now they're being put up to more centralized database. If you go IHC, you go to any hospital, they're able to see what you've done. They don't have that for therapy. And so this was a kind of a way where we figured, why not be able to create a method to continually connect the clients with the therapist, give them something to do, keep that feeling, so when there are long periods, they're able to have those good feelings, be able to see progress, and hopefully not fall asleep. Oh, wow. And and be able to have a higher retention, helping the therapist focus their efforts and needs where they need to be. And so that's where we came up with this idea, kind of pocket therapy. And so the goal of it is that they can be able to give assignments, and they're able to test and measure them and see their effectiveness. As they do the assignments, they'll have feedback where they'll report and collect that information. And then, keeps the contact. Clients are happy to see progress. Anything like that, Johnny?
Yeah, so just the whole idea is, right, that now the therapist with this app, it's a web app, can give these assignments specifically, and we'll show you a sample one that they could do. They give them these activities. They say, report on it a few times a day. Let us know how you feel. And that's all data that we can collect, and then eventually we hope to be able to even see, you know, what was more effective and what treatments or assignments were more effective than others for certain individuals. And like Buster was saying too, what's cool is that now we'll be able to track it over a longer health. So let's say a client goes and sees a therapist for one issue. Now they'll be able to take their information using this app and go to a different client or a different therapist, maybe for another issue, and there's a record of their history and actual steps of progression or like degression that they've kind of gone through. So.
And see, Johnny's really on top of everything and remembers the short-term and long-term stuff. Cool. So we kind of have like this hope of what we want to do, and then we kind of faced a reality when we were doing this. But to kind of give an idea, our tech stack a little bit. So our front end, we were like, hey, you know, let's do React because that's the cool thing. Also, we chose React because there's just some functionality within it that allows us to just kind of update on the fly and be able to make it easy for therapists to create these assignments. We're writing a Rails backend, just an API, so we kind of can cut off all the other stuff that's there, database, Roku. So this is kind of an idea of what we want the progress to look like. And we can give you a quick show. Wow, it looks so small online. It looks small right here too. Okay, well, let's make it bigger. Why not, right? That's the beauty of this. So right now, we don't have it hosted live, and we're still working on some of the backend stuff. That's we'll talk about some of the issues and things we've learned, as we like to say, right? In a second.
Are you usually displaying through a phone? Is that why it was so small here?
I don't know. It was fine earlier when I plugged it into the HDMI. I wonder.
Yeah, the resolutions maybe default higher.
Yeah, bumped up a lot. So
it's a good projector.
It's better than my screen. So yeah, so here we are. So the idea is like a therapist will come in. They can see recent activity. They can see us. Johnny is looking real good. I'm rocking my IS junior core picture here.
Works for IT jobs and therapist jobs, either one.
That's right. Nice. You know. So Janae's my mom. That's who Janae is.
Yeah, so this is like what the therapist would see, right? Those are her clients, and she selects Buster.
Yeah, so she
I see.
Select the client because she always practices her therapy on me. And so again, she can see more detail on what I've been doing. She can go down to the sessions and see a specific session, and within that specific session, she can add one, view, pass stuff, edit, and add a session. And so we have this button. It was working earlier. It's not working right now. But give it a title, all these things. This will be actually a calendar they can pick from for the duration, things like that. And then a kind of a client-side view is this. Hello, me. That's me. That's my mom. Hi, mom. So you click on the therapist, and here you can see a little bit about them. Have a session. Like, okay, well, let's see. She told me to do this. Click on that. Like, okay, remember to do this. We just do random stuff in. You can do that, and so you select the date. So originally thought like, oh, we'll just have it submit, but sometimes they need to go back and do a previous date. They maybe forget. So we figured one way to do it is if it's 3 times a day, it show 3 different time spots. So assignment 1, 2, 3, or I guess time 1, 2, 3 for January 16th, whatever it might be. They select that one, and then they can give it a score, and then maybe write some other things that are helpful for the therapist to go back and see. And then they can submit it, and then eventually do the progress report from the data collected. So we haven't done the progress reports because we don't have any data, but that's kind of the idea behind all of that. So, yeah, nice little sign up.
You didn't create any mock data?
We created some mock data, but it's all in the, we're having issues connecting our API with our front end smoothly. So that's where all our mock data is.
Inaccessible.
Yeah, we have a, show you. Millions of things here. So here's like kind of our mock data that we had, just throwing everything out. RC file.
Mama Llama JPG 11.
Yeah, Mama Llama, Duncan J. We have Ricky Rubio as a counselor. Ricky at Jazz. I like to get creative because I get bored.
Keep it interesting.
Yeah. I'm like, it's for my own entertainment, right? Might as well be entertained. Just different things like that. And so we have different things. We kind of scheme up our database. This we spent quite a bit of time on.
Yeah, we did.
Try to accurately capture enough in a way that makes it easy and accessible.
But you just can't access it through the front end right now.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. So we have the well, not that one. We'll just do core. We'll have some core stuff that we have to do. But according to the web, it should be easy. But according to the web, this should have.
That's part of your lessons learned.
Yeah. So we'll get to our lessons learned, right? And people are like, oh yeah, this is easy. You should do this. Okay. Wow.
Oh yeah, and this wait, can you go back? Yeah, just this real quick. So this was what we're hoping. Like this was supposed to be like that. Like, so we capture that assignment data, right? And then that's where you can come in and track it and see patient data over the life of an assignment, over their time. You can see therapists can come in and look at data. Like, so let's say the assignment lasts for 2 weeks, a month, whatever. The therapist can come in and look at that data and then even give suggestions, right? So maybe try practicing it 5 times a day, whatever it is you're doing. So they can come in and try and give more real-time feedback rather than waiting a couple months. Yeah.
And they can do that through their side, and it shows up on the client side.
Exactly.
Cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then based off, so they're going to also, when they create an assignment, they're going to assign a category. So that way they can do the long term. So they might have, just this is short term, obviously, for the just the assignment itself. But this mindfulness is attached to anxiety, and then they have multiple assignments, so they can now get a larger view of like, oh, over time your anxiety like increased,
in this
decreased.
category,
Yeah, for
Cool.
each category.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it's definitely taken some. I feel like we try to be a little creative, like how we wanted to capture it and do it. And yeah, and so kind of with that, we figured you might want to know about the business model a little bit. And so competitors, the reason why we decided to jump into this is there's not a whole lot of competitors. There's different, I guess, apps that allow them to capture after a session, and they rate sessions, and they compare session to session. But there's nothing in between, and that's where we wanted to focus, is the in between. That's where we felt we could have the most impact in providing something where they can maintain that. Monetization. So right now we do it for free, but we're going to move to a SaaS model, and we wanted to keep it cheap enough. I guess like our goal isn't to make millions and millions of dollars, but because we feel like this is such an important issue that really needs to be addressed. And so we want all therapists to be able to access it. So we're like, well, maybe we could do a threshold of clients, and so we can still like help smaller people, and then help people who are institutionalized at residential treatment centers. So after they leave, they have something to keep going with. And that's why we figured, okay, they're going to have thousands of clients, so we can have something bigger for that. The impact, obviously, is to keep people going. Help them realize that this is something that will change their lives, and they can measure that progress in a way that will motivate them to do it. And our market is we're just focusing on therapists. So my mom is at a residential treatment center, and so these girls transition out, and this place is not cheap. It's $250,000 a year to have their girl go there. So yeah, as you imagine, they're able to do a bit, and so but afterwards these girls are kind of in a limbo. They keep contact for like 6 months to a year, but they're now back in New York. A lot of times they're out on the East Coast and stuff, or wherever else they might be, and so they can be able to keep contact another way as well, rather than just doing Skype sessions. And so that's how we figured we're going to test it and who we're going to roll out first with, to get feedback, and then we just have consents, so we can like, hey, it's okay that Johnny and myself can view it and not have to worry about too much legal jargon right now, because that's going to be big with HIPAA, and why we've also looked at AWS a bit, because they have HIPAA compliant servers. And so I think our goal eventually is to move things over to that, just so we can avoid the hassle of having to do it ourselves. That's a big thing.
Along those lines, be careful with your monetization. There are laws in place against making money off client-therapist relationships.
Okay.
So you can have a therapist pay a subscription, but it can't be tied to any interactions with the client. I ran into this issue.
That's interesting.
Really?
With my Dream Analytics app.
Okay. Yeah, because we're thinking like, okay, if they had, could we say like, okay, you can have up to like
You can
10
have
people?
membership levels.
Membership
as long
levels?
as it doesn't have any influence on the number of clients that they attract. That's where you get in trouble, is if they're incentivized in some form to pull in more clients or have more meetings or have fewer or something like that. So just be aware, there's so many laws around
That's interesting.
client-therapist relationships.
Really interesting.
Yeah. But a subscription works if it's not tied to how many clients are seeing.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, because the reason why we wanted to put the cost on the therapist is future plans.
That's the only legal way to do it, actually, is to put it on
Really?
the therapist, yeah.
Okay, 'cause
But you can't put it on the client themselves.
okay, because
The client couldn't purchase it?
the client couldn't use it.
If it
and
was
then-
disconnected, there's
well,
a,
because
there's
they could make the
sticky
therapist,
laws.
like,
Options.
hey, like here's data for me.
But not required or something?
Yeah, it could be very optional, not pushed by the therapist. I don't want to dig deep into this, but just be aware there are so many
No,
laws
this is
around
really
that.
good.
Cool.
Anytime you're drawing money from a therapy session.
All right,
it
looks
gets
like
sticky.
we might have a little chat later then.
Yeah, we can talk.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Alright, so some of the lessons we learned a lot. That first one is actually really big for us. So we tried a few new technologies. Buster had done some React, I think, before. I had never touched it. Rails was pretty new to us, setting up the API. Also, we used a front-end framework at first. It's called Polaris, Shopify Polaris. And we built out the front end quite a bit with that, and then we realized that it was lacking some functionality that we wanted. So then we went ahead and switched over to Semantic UI React. But it's just a good example of we didn't necessarily do enough research beforehand about what the technologies were, what they did specifically, and our understanding of them. So all of a sudden we were kind of swarmed by a lot of new things, and the learning curve was really steep at first.
Yeah. Yeah, to add on to that, I think we should like lay across the different technologies, seeing the pros and cons. Because there's like Vue.js, Angular, those different things as well that are always competing with React. So I think doing that, like Johnny said, the due diligence would have saved us a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and then that was like a big thing. And I think another thing that would have helped us out too was had another person on board.
That's true.
Because I've been doing more mobile development, actually more Mac OS development, which kind of doesn't, not quite wet. Different mindset, and so yeah, like Johnny said, that kind of threw us for a little loop. And Johnny has been doing security, but yeah.
I haven't programmed in a while, but
Yeah.
it's a little
So,
rusty.
so what have you learned from the project that'll help in your future careers?
Yeah, I think honestly that first and biggest thing is kind of understanding, trying to have more understanding before we jump into something, right? And so that could be development, it could be pushing out a new project, whatever it is making sure that we have enough research, because we just got excited about it and we're like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? We have the enthusiasm, we have the will to do it. But yeah, we definitely didn't look into it enough. So I think no matter where, I mean, that's a lesson that applies, especially in any business aspect. So yeah, whether it's like rolling out a project, just making sure that there's good reasoning for doing it rather than just picking one technology or another or one style.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing as I've dug into React quite a bit this semester. Like in this, I would probably say do it all in Rails. That there's not a really great reason to have to separate your front end, unless I guess you want to tie it in the API. So for mobile in the future, maybe React Native.
That was
in
actually
the
something we thought
future.
about too.
Yeah, so that may be a reason, but you know, this could be a great responsive web app, and I think you would have faced substantially less hurdles if you had kind of gone down that route, or done a DMP app or whatever.
For sure, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like Johnny said, our biggest thing we learned was the whole Benjamin Franklin story. It's like if I was given 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. Hence sharpen the axe. So yeah, just making sure we have a nice sharp axe when we go at it. And so yeah, and then I think that also applied to our development life cycle. So we're like, oh, we'll work on front end so we can kind of see the flow of things a little bit, because we're excited to learn React. And then thinking like, oh, this Rails backend would be way more simple than it was. And so another thing is that, I think it's up there, or maybe not, is we kind of establishing our roles. Because earlier it's like, oh, Johnny's like, yeah, I can do the back end. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do the front end. And now it's like flip-flopped and like intermixed, which is great and bad. But I think having that stability from the get-go would have helped us a lot. But now it doesn't want to come back at all.
Having some more defined rules would have been good.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. And then we had what's going on? It's coming up on the screen.
It'll come here in just a second.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So the future, we're gonna finish up our API. That's our thing. And then the last little bit, have a progress report, and then predictive analysis is way in the future. But yeah, and then
So what do you do with this project going forward? Is it too much, or
after graduation plans?
Yeah,
that's kind of where it goes.
Yeah. So I haven't been doing much development, so this has been like really dusting off the cobwebs for me.
Yeah.
Because I definitely am like more of a security focus now, so I won't be working on it anymore. But Buster has some plans for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Johnny's going to Walmart, and I think I'm going to accept this offer I have up in Salt Lake for it's a mobile role. Hopefully, it's kind of just general development. They'll figure out where they want me to go from there. But I plan on working on it because I have those connections still.
Yeah.
You might as well, and I want to try to find some people to jump on board so I don't have to carry the load on myself. But yeah, that's kind of the big thing, and always find smarter people because there's tons of those that are really smart, and I'm not. So I'm gonna recruit their help, and yeah, that's kind of my first thing is find that, kind of get to a place where they're not gonna walk in like, oh wow, what in the world hit this?
Hey, that happens no matter what.
Yeah,
I actually had a
like,
conversation recently with some very successful people, and they said, the thing that drives me nuts about ISIT people is they come in and they want to redo everything, and like universally, and that drives me nuts too. Use what's in place. It's really a demonstration of maturity.
Yeah.
If you can do that rather than saying, well, we need to scrap it for the next platform.
And I think for me right now, some things I realized was working on like test-driven development. So that's mostly with our backend API type stuff. And so I want to clean that up and kind of do that, and kind of really establish like a way that we're going to do it. And so we don't really, when I have people come on, they're not like, oh, let's do this or that. It's like, oh, hey, this is the way we're working and doing this. How can your talents like fit into this role type thing?
Yep.
It's kind of the idea. But yeah, that's us. And then there's your references.
Nice. Exciting stuff. Bonus points for that. All right. Nicely done. All right. Very good. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up, we have Dario. We have about 5 minutes or so. I'm going to
It got really quiet. Does that mean it's time for us to start?
Yeah, probably like 30 seconds. Yeah. No, you can go ahead in just a sec. So the next group here is Dario. It's actually two different groups working on different parts of the project, but I asked that they kind of present together. And so they'll have a little bit longer presentation than some of the previous ones. So we get kind of a 2-for-1 here, but hopefully you'll make it clear who did what. So
Assess them.
we'll assess the presentation in one. All right, gentlemen, anytime you're ready, the floor is yours.
So yeah, like our project is called Dario, and Seth will explain in a minute a little bit more about where the idea for the name came from and where the idea for the project came from. But all 5 of us are working together on it. We used to work together at the company formerly known as Jarvis.
I'm sorry.
Well, with everything that happened, it was still a great thing because then we got to work on this and everything else together. So Seth, Scott, and I handled, we built the Rails 5 API and then handled all of the web stuff. And then Jake and Matt built a native iOS application to go with it. So yeah, Seth is going to explain where the idea came from and what our solution is.
All right, so we realized that birthdays are the forgotten holiday. To start, I want everyone to think of their last birthday. What did you get for your last birthday? What did you do for your last birthday? If you're like me, you have no idea. I don't remember at all. I have no idea what I got for my birthday last year, no idea what I did that day, and it's because birthdays are the forgotten holiday. Which is why we came up with Dario. So Dario is a fun way for people to basically crowdfund a birthday and contribute in a fun, simple, easy way to contribute a small amount and make a huge difference. So we realized that one of the problems with birthdays is that, first of all, everyone forgets when your birthday is. I mean, usually even your close friends, they find out about your birthday on the day of your birthday, and it's really too late for them to go out. You can't go to the store that day when you're at work. So basically what ends up happening is you get a handful of things, some gift cards, a couple small items, and you really end up with an unmemorable birthday. Which is why Dario will allow you to select what you want for your birthday, and then you can share that link, and it's a really social way for people to engage in your holiday to celebrate you. And so we've kind of created this platform to allow people to do just that. It's a really social platform. It's a way that you select a gift, and then everyone can crowdfund that experience, and we'll deliver the gift to you. So we're going to go into a little bit of a demo and go over some of the platform. Cool. All right, awesome. So this is what Matt and I worked on. It's the iOS native app. And so first thing you do when you open the app, you'll see the screen, and you have to log in with Facebook. And from Facebook, we gather the user's first name, last name, email if they had it provided, and their birthday. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that and log in with Facebook. And usually here you would see all the permissions that we asked for, and you would say accept. And so the first name, last name, and birthday was just grabbed from the Facebook SDK. And then we still have a couple of fields that Facebook didn't provide with us because the user had it as a private on their profile. So we'll go ahead and just finish out our onboarding. Add an email. And our phone number.
So what do you need that info? Especially the phone number, I guess.
We use the phone number as basically a key value for
Okay.
the user.
I
It's
see.
a way that as you share to people and as people donate and things
Yeah.
come across, we're
Easily
basically mapping
connect
everybody
based on
up
it.
based on the phone number.
Got it. Okay.
So the phone number is used all over the app, and that's like, it's our most important identifier
Okay.
for who you are.
Yeah,
Cool.
and also when you donate to a friend, you'll get a text and everything, so it's a way that we can just send it
Got it.
out.
Got it.
Well, it was a tricky thing for us because like the social aspect, as Seth said, is like an important part of it. And so we wanted people to be able to like add friends and stuff. We figured the cell phone number is like the most common thing that people would have
Yeah.
about their friends that would be unique. So
Cool.
Yeah. And we let people be added to the platform like in a variety of ways. So if I share to you and you come in, you can get added even if you haven't created a profile, and then we'll match it back later.
Yeah.
And put it all together. So
Yeah.
that's the phone number.
Cool.
Awesome, so I'm gonna just click finish for onboarding. And now we're into the main part of the app. So you can tell we have a tab bar on the bottom with three separate sections, and we have a countdown until my birthday, my next birthday, which is January 23rd of next year, which is in a while, so 286 days. And so I'll just kind of go over each tab really quick. So this is kind of the main tab where you'll see your own campaign, what gifts you selected and everything. The second tab, this is your friends tab. And so right here you can see all the friends that you've added, and we just on the create we add 5 friends automatically just for demo purposes. That's kind of nice because you have some automatic friends. So you can see all your friends here, their birthdays, and that little gift icon on Scott and Seth means that they have an active campaign that I can donate to right now. And then the last tab is just a generic kind of settings tab. We'll put more settings here in the future, but right now it's just kind of your profile tab, and we'll put like more like terms and conditions and about stuff here in the future. So we're going to just go ahead and go through the flow of selecting a gift that you want for your birthday. So right now we're hitting the API that Seth, Jordan, and Scott created, and then they're integrating with the Amazon Prime or Amazon product API.
So you're going through their API, your API is hitting the backside for all the queries?
Right.
So why are you doing that instead of just going straight for the product queries at least?
Well, this is a pretty interesting use case for the
Yeah.
Amazon Products API. It's actually meant to be used a little bit differently, their API.
Mhm.
It's meant to be used for like affiliate links on your site for
Yeah.
advertising.
Yeah.
And so part of the reason that we funneled it through is because there isn't like an SDK or anything for native clients, so it would all have to be like manual parsing and everything like that. And B, as we go through the app stores, I don't think that the usage in that way would be kind of, we have to look
Oh,
into
that
kind
they
of
wouldn't
some of
like
the
you using
usage, yeah.
third-party API?
Well,
Interesting.
anytime you put another company's like name
Yeah.
in your app, it's really hard to get through the app
I see.
store without permission.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, my only concern is, you increase the amount of, data and traffic
Yeah,
flowing through
it's actually
your
super
API.
fast. We'll show you a search. It's
Yeah.
actually been really fast.
Yeah, and I think another reason for it too is in the future what we wanted for the web was
We also
also
wanna
making
start-
this API, and so I feel like you're going to parse it once.
And we also want to
Mhm.
start a lot of like logging what people are looking at,
Yeah.
searching. Like we want to start
Centralized,
collecting
yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
And in the end,
That makes a
we're
lot of
probably
sense.
going to swap this mechanism out and go to more of a, these are the top 500 products. 'Cause we want to do like featured products where people are actually paying us to put
That
their
makes a lot of
products
sense,
here.
too.
And so that going through the back end mechanism is a lot easier.
Yeah, so in the future we want this just the first thing that pops up are our featured products, but for right now we just have the generic search of Harry Potter, because everyone likes Harry Potter. So we're going to go ahead and search for a product. Let's say for my birthday I want an Echo Dot. So I'll search for that, and right here we can see the dots, and if you scroll down you'll see other accessories for your dot, and then here's the Echo Spot in black, the show, and you can just kind of scroll down, and we have the little spinner that will keep loading those in as you scroll down. So pretty simple search, but it's cool that you can see all the Amazon stuff inside of our app.
Yeah, we ran into some rate limiting, so they only allow 1 request per second, and as you get more conversions, they put your rate limiting up. So right now we have rate limiting in place actually on both, but on the back end I'm like logging every time we send and then checking and doing calculations.
So you're not hitting too frequently?
We don't go over the limit.
Nice.
So.
Which is another reason for the featured, just so as we get more users.
We realize as we grow, we're going to
hit
go
that
over
1
that pretty
second.
quick.
Yeah. Cool.
So.
Cool, so I'll go ahead and just tap on that first one. And so here we see the detailed view of that product, and then a description, what we get back from the API, which is very long. But anyway, so if I wanted to have give this for my birthday and have it crowd funded, I'll just go ahead and select the gift on the bottom, and it'll take me back to the main view with my newly selected gift, along with the countdown still.
So at this point, and this is kind of a challenge because at this point you're basically waiting for your birthday, and he's got to wait 286 days. So we don't really know how to handle that yet, but basically at this point he's almost stuck until his birthday gets closer, because we got to figure out something on the product side to make it less, oh hey, I'm done until.
Are there notifications when somebody contributes?
We don't have notifications in place yet, but we will.
There will be. Because that would be one way to continue engagement, is if you don't have to know who contributed, but you could, hey, another person contributed.
The amount I need to raise to be able to get that. And then it also has this link here. So in the future, we plan to be able to do donations and everything within the app. We want everything to be focused on the app, but right now we're using these guys' website that they built to handle our donations. But we have this link that you're able to copy. You can post it to your social media platforms. Your friends could also come into your profile view, copy that link, and share it too if you're a little bit bashful to share your own link. So right now we have no donations, but if we were to share this link,
so maybe if
somewhere,
get a few people to go on and
let's throw the link up on
where go to the.
So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to make that link so there was really no dependencies. So everything on the link is mobile responsive and just like ready to be kind of shot around all over the web. But can we throw the URL up so people can jump in and donate to it?
That's almost that show.
Oh, right here.
Presentation. Yeah, so if you guys on your phones or on your computers, if you want to go to this,
Is that the right one?
this URL, you'll be able to see Jake's campaign. And I'll get on here in a second. I'll walk through the process of actually making a donation, and then we put that donation page on a WebSocket connection. So as donations come in, you can see it update live in real time. But I'll walk through and I'll show you guys how that works. So if you come in here, you see a lot of the same stuff you saw in the mobile app. You see the picture, you see what they wanted, and then you can come in here and choose to make a donation. If you want it to be anonymous, you just leave your first name and last name blank. We're kind of trying to think of what's the best way to, like, from a UX perspective of like making that a clear thing that, hey, you can donate anonymously so that your name doesn't show up to people, that kind of thing. But
I think you have a checkbox that grays out the boxes.
That form's been a little confusing to people because we have like a 3-step form and like everything's required.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's been a little confusing.
And then, so you put in your name, put in your phone number.
Oh, and you can donate with 424242.
Oh, perfect. I'm going to donate lots of money then.
424242 is a card number that will work. So.
That's just the Stripe test number, so it doesn't actually charge anything. But if I go ahead and submit that, I get just a little confirmation thing showing how close Jake is to getting to his campaign. And if I go back to the campaign thing, we see that donation come in, we see Dr. Maservi's donation come in.
They should also send you a text
Lot of love.
confirming that you donated.
You should get a text message as well, hopefully. If you'll notice, and we got to figure out a way to make this a little more clear, but that's where we took our margins. We take, I think we're at, is it 2.7%? So basically, we take 5% total. 2.7 of that goes to Stripe, and then we take about 2.3. So we're still kind of working on that, but we are right there is where we're kind of taking that deduction. So as a donator, we're taking 5% as a servicing fee. We want to make that a little more clear, like in our terms and conditions, but that's why you're seeing those numbers slightly different than what you actually donated.
Yeah, so on
We're so
the
close.
43
yeah, so one more person's
We
got to
gotta
jump
get
in.
what's the credit card expiration date?
Any number
Just
in the
anything
future.
in the future.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll see if we can get one more donation in here, see if Jake can get his Echo Dot for his birthday.
Yeah, hopefully.
Don't give him enough.
While you're waiting for donation, I have an idea maybe for anonymous thing. Because you know how Google gives like random creatures? But if you just have somebody to get like they want to be anonymous, and just click on that and it'll create like a little random.
Oh yeah, like the
person,
anonymous
like,
little like avatar.
Yeah, like Bubba Hubba.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like some random name.
Yeah, I think a call to action that's, donate anonymously, and then here's another part of the form that's, fill out your things.
And we're also working on right now if we want to, in general, even include how much they donated.
There we go.
If we do want to have that, just have the name.
Got it. We got it.
Goal is reached. So our plan as well. So a lot of the questions is what happens if we don't hit the goal, or what happens to the money that goes over the goal. So both those cases are going to be handled with just an Amazon gift card.
Great idea.
Yeah. So any excess would just be in a gift card, or if they didn't hit the goal, we'd send them a gift card for what they did get.
Do they select maybe different gift cards?
Yeah, in the future we would like to have partnerships with different people that we could get gift cards and do cool things like that. Here, go back there. Yeah, sorry. And then we'll switch back over to the app real quick. So you can see here too, it updated on the app. So kind of the same view there, and you can see the different donations coming in there. The last part of the app is just this, is if you have your friends, you can see who has an active campaign going, whose birthdays they are. In the future, we'll get those up on the top and give you a little notification when those do become active. You can tap on those, and it'll just bring you to that same web view right now to be able to go and make the donation from your phone. This is Scott's, right? Yeah, this is Scott's. So eventually, that's all going to be housed within the app. You're going to be able to donate natively in the app and do your friends' campaigns and do everything that way. We just ran out of time for right now.
Well, and plus we didn't want to make someone download the app just to donate.
Yeah.
It would probably lose.
Yeah, so that's what the link's for too, is that you can post that. You don't have to have the app to be able to go donate. Anybody can just go onto their computer and make the donation.
And then something else that we've been trying to figure out a good way of doing is, I feel like most people don't want to share their own birthday link. They probably want their friends to share it. And so we're trying to figure out a good way of if I see that Scott's birthday's coming up, an easy way for me to grab that link early and send it out to all of his friends as well.
So there's, I don't know that they're that popular anymore. A few years ago, there are Facebook apps that you could create. I mean, since you're logging in there anyway, kind of tapping into that and, having, taking advantage of that for all your friend groups.
Yeah, that would be ideal, is if Facebook themselves could just basically broadcast when it is your notification. So Facebook's kind of advertising it as opposed to yourself.
So as a user, I have to go in and create accounts, say what things I want, right?
Yeah.
If you have a friend say hey, I want to get you a gift, pick something out, and they can start a campaign on it. Is that?
Yeah, we're actually, that's all in the roadmap.
Okay.
So we want to have it, you can say, hey, pick something, and then you get, a download link, and you can go set up your own. We want to have all that in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I really think that that's a more likely scenario for, a handful of individuals to go out and say, hey, I want to do something for this person, send them the link, get the campaign going, rather than, hey, my birthday's coming up in a bit.
Yeah. And from what we've realized, and researched into it, seems like the younger generation doesn't really have a problem, making a campaign and being sending it to their friends, but definitely us and older would feel very uncomfortable saying, hey,
This is what I
create
want.
the, you know, fund my gift birthday basically. So yeah, we definitely want both options there.
Go to the admin
So
portal.
the last thing is, yeah, basically we just have like a simple admin portal right now so that we can keep track of like the orders that we need to purchase and things like that. So right now,
So this is the one we just did, and it shows like our totals, the money that we have, and then that affiliate link there.
yeah, so you can like go look. That's good. Not working. Let's see if that works.
Yeah.
No,
Fail.
that's not working. That's my bad. Anyways, so you would come in, and this is basically just kind of like a little validation thing. You put in the order ID and the tracking number, right there. And then once it's done, it gets put into the completed list.
So talk to me about shipping. What address is this Echo going to?
It's
So
a major gap in our design.
Fair enough.
We need to gather the user's address. And
Yeah.
we don't have it in our current build.
Yeah.
we already feel like our sign up is
It's
like
long.
a little bit long because you do the Facebook and then you fill out like 6 fields.
What if you did it when they congratulate them on fulfilling the campaign? Says, hey, your campaign is you met. What address would you like to send to? Because right there's an incentive to provide information.
Right.
And that's what we're leaning towards. We just don't want like them to not do it and then basically we're just hanging on to their gift.
Right.
We don't order
forever.
a gift until they provide us with the money. Also.
Right. Well,
So-
you know what I mean.
Right,
Do you get affiliate discounts if you buy Amazon gift cards?
I don't think so.
If you do, I would say start out by just, having it all digital. You still have them select the product up front, but the reward is an Amazon gift card, and then they can figure out what they want to spend it on, if they really still want that, or if they already have it, or something else. But I think you psychologically take advantage of those that are wanting to give for a specific purpose to a particular person. But then, cutting out this whole, it's not that big of a deal, but you're going to have to hire someone to go in and place each of these orders. And
Yeah.
if you scale, that's kind of a pain. But,
Yeah. It's
I don't
hard
know.
because we
Maybe-
do feel like it's something that kind of differentiates us is that you like get the thing in the mail a few days later.
Yeah, that would be cool.
We definitely thought
starting
about that
out.
as well.
I have a question for you guys. So, like with Jensen, when you fulfill, 286 days before, when does that come? Does it come when is it going to wait? Because I know like prices fluctuate. Because Amazon Dot was what $30 for a couple months now. It's like 50 on there.
We're
Well,
basically
it's like, does it
we're
hold the
basically
money
willing
then
to
for
accept a little bit of price fluctuation, or at least we're hoping that we're going to be willing to accept some price fluctuation, because we know the prices change a lot, but we can't really. It's kind of just too much for us to always be keeping track of, and we feel like sometimes we'll win, sometimes we'll lose. So hopefully we win.
Well,
more
the
than
thing
we
with
lose.
that too is, so your campaign's not, you can't do anything with your campaign or with your
Till
birthday
25
until
days.
it's actually
Till about
your
25
birthday.
days
Yeah, till about
before.
25 days
25 days.
before. And before that you have the option to edit your gift. And so you can always go on there, look back, if for whatever reason the price jumped a ton, say, okay, that's not going to work anymore, I'm going to swap out my gift to something else.
Yeah, I would say explore a policy, that says X% over, then we just give you a gift card instead, or something like that.
Yep.
So
Let's move on with the presentation.
cool. All right, so just really, we've already kind of talked about all the technologies throughout the presentation, but the API, as mentioned, is a Rails 5 API, active model serializers, version 10.
Don't use version 9.
We've hooked into the Amazon product advertising and kind of mentioned some of the issues that we've had there, especially just the throttling of requests. We use Stripe for our payment processor. As Seth mentioned, we have a flat rate of 2.7 that they take, as well as 30 cents,
30 cents, yeah.
per transaction.
I would in the short term, definitely, move on other options of funding. Venmo, PayPal, others where the processing fees are substantially less, and you still take your 5%, but then your margins are so much better.
Luckily, we have $1,000 of free student credit for Stripe fees, so we'll use that up and see where that goes.
I'm expecting much greater things than just $1,000 worth to.
Of fees, though.
Yeah.
So it's a decent amount of revenue for us, because if you're up to 1,000 in fees,
well, it's just $1,000, right?
2%.
Well, it's whatever.
Have 50,000 in revenue.
Right.
Hmm.
Because it's a percentage.
But we definitely do.
But your gain is only $1,000 around.
It's more.
No, it's
Why
a
is
lot
it?
more because
Because it's the fees.
Yeah, it's just the fees
So
from
it's-
that transaction.
So like their credit is $1,000 of
97%.
fees.
Oh, so it's not the full 2 point whatever percent.
Right.
I see.
So, but yeah.
Yeah. But
we
but
definitely need
well
to watch
then.
the margins.
Yeah.
One of the things we're happy with though is that all of our integrations are fully functional. So we're actually processing cards. Like as soon as we turn it to live, cards are going through. We're actually using the Amazon Products API. The Facebook works. The Twilio works. So.
Cool.
Yeah, so just for future plans, we've already talked about most of them, but the biggest things, like within the app, we want to do a little bit of UI overhaul, get some things figured out that way, how we talked about what we're going to display when they don't have their active campaign. We need a lot of marketing. We're going to be doing a lot of user testing with just different things that we've already talked about, the best way to approach things. And then with the monetization, we want to really nail that down and get our margins right. Right now, we're currently banking on the Amazon affiliate links, which gives you 5%. Using Amazon credit cards is also an additional 5%, so there's 10% of Amazon margins right there, as well as our fees. And so those are kind of what we're exploring the legality of everything that way to make sure that we're going to be able to move forward on that way.
I think we all kind of realized we got a pretty good MVP, so this is pretty close to being able to at least be put into test flight in a open beta or something like that. But there are gaps, so like we need to figure out the address thing. So we have a lot of gaps through it, so we want to kind of put it out there, start a little bit more of an agile process where we have people use it, talk about their frustrations, give feedback, encourage people to give us that feedback loop. And then hopefully we can close in on that and develop some of the features that are requested. We already know about a lot. We don't really love the way that you add a friend right now. We've had a lot of discussions about that, like since day one.
How do you add a friend? That was one of my questions. Is you're integrating with Facebook, why not just?
Yeah, so
they
basically,
won't give us the friends list.
we can show it. Yeah, but right now it's just you have to manually add them, put in their names and everything that way.
So, Facebook locked down their APIs pretty substantially in the last version. Like it was like if you were on an older one, like a 2 dot, you could get that. Now you cannot get that.
Okay. So you can't do a spam blast.
No.
Okay.
The only thing you can access is you can see other people who have installed and authorized our application. You can see those.
But you can't invite
But you
friends.
can't go get like new groups. And we looked really hard for that, and it's just not in their APIs. So.
But what we can do though, because things that we want to do is we can tap into your contacts on your phone,
Okay.
pull all those if you give us access, and we can shoot out a text to your friends and say, hey, we want to invite you to this service.
Look up the friend's phone in your system first to
Yeah, and at least invite them and say,
automatically
hey,
link, so.
here's this cool thing. We want you to go pick a product or do something that way, and they can sign up. And then also being able to search friends that are already members of Dario and add them that way.
So I like the overall product, kind of plans for the future, but what does it look like, day to day, is this an afternoon, evening, weekend thing? Is it?
For now.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, until we can get a proof of concept out, get it into the App Store and just see what happens. The great thing about this is it's extremely low costs for us because we have, besides, we actually also have a designer going to be helping us too. and so we really have no costs except for server costs and whatever fees we'll have to pay.
There's
And
almost
so-
no cost to us, and there's almost no maintenance.
Yeah.
It should be able to pretty much run, with the exception of fulfilling the orders. It should be able to run without any hands-on.
How much would you be willing to be bought out for today if an investor came in and said, hey, I think this is viable, I've got some money to really push it? What's kind of your threshold?
That's also been a topic of discussion.
I don't know if we've thought about that very well yet, so
Yeah.
I don't know if we're prepared, but.
I don't have investors in my
You're
back
right.
pocket.
Yeah.
I do know some folks that I could float an idea like this, and they may be like, whoa, I want a piece of that.
If somebody, I think really the partner that we would be looking for, because we can do all the tech.
Yeah.
And we're confident in that, and there's nothing hard to us about the technology. The partner we'd be looking for would be a business partner, like you said, with some
Yeah.
money, because a lot of what we need is marketing, messaging, like that type of stuff, and we can build it. Sales, just getting the word out there, getting people on the product. We can do the rest. So that's kind of, I think, what we'd be looking for, as well as probably a little bit of runway, just to be able to, to validate that.
So give me some numbers. It's the sort of thing where I have conversations and I need to kind of.
I think Matt's most qualified.
Or you guys can get back to me on
Ideally,
kind of
it would be
what you
awesome
think.
If we really could get an investor in here who was serious about it, serious about helping out with marketing. The hard part with us is we obviously need to support our families.
Yeah.
Right? We all have our day jobs. What would help this take off faster than anything would be if we could get enough to support ourselves for a certain amount of time where we could all come together and work full time on this.
Yeah.
Because if we could work full time on this, we could make so much progress.
Yeah. Well, what about the part-time model until you
I think we
reach
could
certain
do
thresholds?
that. Yeah. If we had funding, if there was funding at all, I think we could do a lot of damage with even like $50,000.
So let's do this. I think this obviously has a lot of potential. I think the as long as kind of the affiliate fees hold up and that sort of thing, you
there
could.
Are some big challenges with the affiliate.
Yeah.
Because as I've looked into the terms and conditions, it's going to be the Amazon affiliate stuff is going to be interesting because we don't exactly know how it's going to play out. We're just kind of banking up because it's like I said, we're using it in a kind of a obscure way.
Yeah.
For that, like how we're using it. So we'll see. But I think bringing in products because really, I think there are probably a handful of things that people actually want to buy, and they're all common. I mean, Echoes and PlayStations and Xboxes, like people love those things, and I think we could get enough people interested if we offered those that we might even be able to go and do some of, like our distribution channel could change.
Sure.
So, we'll see.
Have you guys run the number on market, like birthday present market size? Like how much money goes?
All people.
Ginormous.
All people.
Because I think like when you talk to investors, like that'll be very, very.
No, you're right. I think
that number.
I think that was one of the things we identified. We haven't done any market analysis, but I think that people underspend on birthdays, and I think it's because of more of a, like I said, just forgetfulness, not prepared. People spend on all kinds of holidays like Christmas, and people spend on every holiday. But the birthday is one where it's so last minute that I don't think people put their dollars towards it as much as maybe they would.
Well, and the hard part is too is because you have a lot of really close relationships, and at that point you're fine, trying to find them a gift or at least give them money or do something. But you also have these secondary relationships that you're close with them and you'd like to do something for them, but you don't have a lot of money to spend for them. And it would look kind of dumb if you just Venmoed them $2 or something like that. And so that's also one of our ideas, thinking of not putting the price that you actually donated to that campaign, because maybe that would help incentivize people to go in and donate $2 or whatever it is, but they get their name on their campaign and they said it was their way of wishing you a happy birthday instead of putting a Facebook wall message.
Yeah.
But that they donated $1 or $2, and that we're kind of banking on if you can get enough of those secondary relationships that are willing to do that, you can get something awesome, as opposed to having the 1 or 2 contributors that will donate more
I know
but we can also
people-
tap into that second market.
You know, a lot of families do stuff like that where people pool together for gifts. We're just providing the technology to do that.
Mhm.
People already do that all the time because they've realized this problem. They just haven't like put a solution to it. People have realized that, you know, if I get you a $20 gift card, it you know, you enjoy it, but you don't love it.
Yep.
And it's not my fault, it's not your fault, but you just don't. No one loves like a $10 gift card.
I'll take it.
I'll take it.
What's the name Dario? Where did that come from? That's
Let's
not
just say
intuitive or
it's-
semantic.
Let's just say it's highly controversial.
So dar in like Spanish and a couple other languages means to give.
Oh, okay.
And so we wanted just DARIO because we have like DARR.io, but we had to throw the 2 R's just because DAR.io
We messaged
is
the
hard to
person
take in.
who owns DAR.io and he didn't respond.
Just sitting on it.
It's just
Yeah.
sitting.
Parked.
But basically, our domain is DARR.io.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be DAR, so to give is the verb.
The river of giving.
Right.
And then, did you guys have a slide on lessons learned? I might have dozed off. Sorry.
No, but
oh, good. I didn't doze
yeah.
off.
But we didn't have a slide.
So let's talk about it.
I'd say one of the biggest things, like, and we learn this all the time, like, we love to, like, pound out, like, a bunch of features and get them, like, 85% of the way there. But the problem we were realizing even, like, a week and a half ago is, like, we can't even get through the whole app, but we have, like, all these weird miscellaneous
Like I've
things
got search
going on.
indexes and all this stuff, and like,
Yeah,
you can't
like-
even do the main, you know, the
We got
primary
text
flow.
messages sending out, but we can't go through the whole flow of the
So
app.
we call that feature ADD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, we have that, like, on all the projects we work on, it's fun to build out
We've
something
got a
new,
nice
but we-
animation on the thing. I got animation.
Yeah, I like that little box.
And so, like, I'd say one of the biggest lessons is, like, every time we work on something, we just really try to, like, focus on, like, let's get the full circle, as we call it. Let's make sure we can do all of our main functionality, and then let's branch out into kind of the fun
Which,
features. and
one
stuff.
thing we're really happy of is that today we can do that because
Right.
we spent like a lot of late nights the last week and a half just like plugging all the pieces together and saying, okay.
Because there's a lot of
what's
missing
broken?
gaps that you don't think about until you try to
Yeah.
go all the way through. So.
Any other major lessons as you've gone through this?
Just a lot of, I think, really thinking through all the different scenarios of everything. Because we initially came together and we said it'd be cool if we can do this, that, and that, and then we start developing. And halfway through, just kind of like we talked about, it's like, oh, well, this might not work, or how would a user actually use it in that way? Then we kind of have to go back to the drawing board, but at that point, at least for the capstone portion, it was already kind of built and a little too late. And so maybe just doing a little bit more user testing, a little bit more of that validation up front to make sure that we're building what we should be building.
And we actually cut our feature set a little bit from what we set out to do. So originally what we wanted to do was to have 3 wishes in tiers. So like a low $0 to $50 wish, a $50 to $150, and a $150 plus. We wanted to have like the effort towards kind of getting a better gift for your birthday. So we wanted to have that kind of progression, and then we would send you whichever gift you achieved.
Okay. Yeah.
We ended up pulling that and going for 1 wish just for simplicity.
But probably still on the roadmap.
Probably still on the roadmap.
Just a little bit more way to gamify it and help
Yeah.
people incentivize. Oh, they're so close to their top
Kickstarter
3
campaign
wish.
level sort of thing.
Yeah.
Did you have a slide on your tech stack? You talked about it a little bit, but
It's Rails.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Okay.
Basically.
Yeah.
We use
You had a
Rails,
slide on that.
React, and iOS.
And then, I guess another thing to come is we'll be building the Android app too.
Okay.
Building that out.
We want to flush out the iOS.
We probably want to do some launches with iOS first, just
Yeah.
before we invest in
See if
Android.
there's
See if
traction.
people
Exactly.
like it or not.
Well, and the good thing is too is like everyone can donate. Doesn't matter if you even have a phone or not.
Right.
So that's the nice about it.
And then one other lesson that I think is an important takeaway from it is there's this really hard balance between like how much it can do and then like how well it does the things that it can do.
Yeah.
And I feel like Seth was talking about, some of the early plans we had for it, we've kind of, come down on the scope in order to like have a quality experience with some of those things. So, we hit like the design aspect of things pretty hard and we're trying to make it look and feel nice, and that you know, the time you spend on that, it just takes away from time, you know, adding more features to it. And it's surprising how long you know, the 80-20 rule or whatever, you know, you can get a feature, like Scott was saying, we can get something most of the way through the process and most of the way done, but then to like get it that last little bit where to finish it and get it working, and then also to get it so it's like a pleasant thing to use, just eats up so much of your time.
Yep. Yeah, that's 5-10%.
We spent so much time on that donation form because the form actually works really well as far as validating everything and not letting you mess up at all. You basically, hopefully you can't at this point give it a bad input that it won't accept, like that it will not accept. It'll force you to make everything right. So, like I gave it to my mom and to my sister, and they both had 500 errors within a minute. So I don't know how they did it. Well, I know how they did it. They donated like $10 million, and Stripe will throw 500 over 999,000, and a couple other things. So
now we're fixing it.
So we fixed all of those.
So if we ever get really big players in here,
Oh,
donating over $1 million, then we're going to be in trouble.
Wire transfer that.
It's a big fee.
That's right.
Just a little credit card transaction. Yeah. Any other questions? I think that's all we have for today.
All right, very good. Nicely done. All right, we'll be going next door for our next presentation, W352. So I'll stop the streaming and start it up over there in a minute.